Good evening. Welcome to Triton College's virtual lecture recital series. My name is Salvatore Siriano. I am the lead music instructor at Triton College. Thank you for joining us this evening. I just want to let everyone know that we are recording this event. This is a webinar, so your video will always be off. If you have any questions for members of MKD Trio, you can type them in the Q&A section. I'm going to share a copy of the program in the message section if interested right now. So the members of MKD Trio are Marie Bennett, flute, Katherine Hughes on violin, and Dorothy Deen cello. MKD Trio members perform in regional and musical theater orchestras, in recording sessions, at churches, and in concert halls throughout the United States. The ensemble's diverse repertoire ranges from Baroque to pop's covers and everything in between, including contemporary classical, jazz, and world music. In 2020, the ensemble pivoted and currently specializes in pandemic-appropriate, socially distanced concerts. During the summer of 2020, MKD Trio performed on numerous porches, patios, and porticos. Marie, Katherine, Dorothy, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Great, good evening. Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Thank you. So we have 5 pieces in store for everyone. I enjoyed listening to them all. Just let everyone know, just due to the pandemic and being, the situation that we're in, we did, for everyone's safety, just record them beforehand, but they were all performed live. There's no trickery. So I think you'll really enjoy the program that they've selected for this evening. If any of you would like to first maybe just introduce as far as how you formed MKD Trio.
Well, I can start and just say that Marie Bennett and I have been working together for almost 20 years, and we met in church playing liturgical music, and then Katherine also joined us in playing a lot of liturgical situations, but we of course play all over Chicagoland in different ensembles. So we just really enjoyed playing a liturgical setting where we could play a lot of classical music together, and it just sort of grew from there. So yeah, it's been great.
Thank you. Great. And as you've mentioned, in the summer, it's been a challenge for performers of all sorts. And I know many who just kind of said, "Oh, well, I'm taking a break. Thankfully, I'm still teaching, and that's it." But your group, what interested me is seeing that you were still performing, finding ways to perform live. Obviously this is virtual through a college, but still, when the weather was nice out, you as a group were still out there doing live music, which can't be beat under any circumstances. So
Yeah, I actually found I ended up performing more during the summer of 2020 than I do in your typical summer. So it was actually, even though everything else was sort of lessened throughout the year, I actually, with all of our concerts, we did several on me and Dorothy's front porch. We did some there. We did one up at Catherine's church. We played up in Bartlett. So, it was kind of funny. I actually did more sort of concerts during the pandemic, but because we were forced into thinking about different ways to actually safely present music. So it's been an interesting year.
yes,
It's true.
definitely.
And it was great just to find out how much the audience was missing live music. That was something that we learned by continuing to play for them. So it was very exciting for us. And also it seemed like it was really exciting for the audience too.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure I know my students, one of the things that's a requirement for most college students taking music class is to attend a couple of recitals. And obviously, they're fulfilling that requirement virtually, but they're really missing out by just not being able to see a live performance. There really is nothing comparable to it. And especially to hear, all acoustic instruments, there's something to be said about pop and rock and all that. And I know you play it. I enjoy it. I played in rock bands as a kid, but there's just something about just three or four people getting together, no electronics, nothing, just creating music together. That's really special. So I hope they still have the opportunity to see that someday. So, well, why don't you tell us about the first piece we're going to hear tonight?
Marie, did you want to start on that, or?
Actually, Dorothy, you had some good stuff on the Haydn.
Oh, I thought it was something else, actually. I was gonna, no, it's Fine. I didn't actually prepare that one. I did the Brandenburg, but like it's.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I can do a little bit on the Haydn. So the Haydn London trios, I think probably the three of us have played them in almost every possible combination. I've done flute and violin and cello and two flutes and cello and two flutes and bassoon. And, so these are very popular. We're going to be playing trio number 3 for you tonight. So you'll hear that it's in 3 different movements. So there's a fast first movement, slower second movement, and back to a faster one for the final movement. Sort of a typical sonata format where you have that fast, slow, fast movement there. So the trios were written in London. That's why they're named the London Trios. And yeah, I hope you enjoy them. I think we can just go ahead and
let's
play
get started.
these.
Yeah,
Let's
get
listen.
the music started. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're all going to disappear, but we'll all magically come back when the music's over.
All right, so that was the London Trio. And the next piece that we have up is the Concertino by Walter Eschbacher. And he was a Swiss conductor and composer and cellist, actually, who was born in 1901 in Switzerland and died in, I think it was 1969. And he started playing cello when he was 10. I know Dorothy's got a lot of students in that age range and even down to the much, much younger than that. So in some senses, for a string player, he started a little bit old. I know Dorothy's got students that are, what, 4? What's your youngest one?
Well, I mean, they start now at really young, 3 and 4 years old, but
Right.
7 and 8 is pretty ideal.
Right. So he started at 10, and then he wrote his first composition when he was 12, which was a minuet for cello and piano, and then wrote a cello concerto when he was 16 and kind of went from there. So he went on to actually write a lot of choir music, despite the fact he sort of has an instrumental background in starting off, and he wrote a lot for choruses, both mixed choruses, and then a lot for men's chorus, a few pieces for women's chorus, and definitely some other instrumental pieces as well. No symphonies that I could find. I don't think he wrote any symphonies. It was hard to find much information on him, so this is still sort of an ongoing research project.
I agree. I tried to look up a little bit about him because I was actually first introduced to him
through this.
Through this, exactly.
Yeah, it was this piece. And, sometimes we find a composer and we say, oh, this is great. Let's see if they wrote anything for our combination or anything that we could arrange for this combination. And sometimes, I mean, we've gotten music, living composers. We could probably do concerts just of composers we've met through LinkedIn who have sent us their music, and we've played that. So, all kinds of ways musicians stumble on pieces, and sometimes it's first through a piece, and then that introduces you to a composer. Sometimes, just different ways. This one was, we were looking for more music, and I found this online and bought it, hoping it was good. And it's become one of our favorite pieces. So this was sort of a chance happening that we did find this one. Same format as the last one, so it's got the faster first movement, slower second movement. I think you'll really hear his celloistic roots in the opening of the second movement. Just beautiful, beautiful cello.
The second movement is quite beautiful. That's what struck me the most hearing it the first time.
Yeah, the second movement's gorgeous. So interesting note just because I know there's a lot of students on here, just from a performer standpoint. So we're sitting, as you can see in the videos, we're actually not too far spread apart. Like the flute choir I conduct now, all my students are 8 feet apart. No one can hear anything going on. It's really hard to hear over that distance. We're still a little farther apart than we normally would be. And with that screen, if you didn't notice it, look in the next video clip, but there's a big screen between me and Dorothy just to, even though we're all masked up, just to kind of cut down on the amount of air I'm blowing at them. And it makes it just a little harder to hear. So there's a moment towards the beginning of the slow movement, of the second movement, where I got slightly out of phase with the group. Like, you may not even notice it, but I feel like I just lost the beat a little bit. So, and And what happened was Catherine caught on to that. Catherine's an amazing ear and an amazing chamber musician. And she caught on, moved a little bit more, which kind of brought me back into the group. So that was it's definitely harder to hear each other, both in the outdoor concerts everyone's nodding, the outdoor concerts that we've done, and even the indoor concerts when we're all trying to space out farther and we have screens blocking blocking the sound a little bit. So just the physical connection between us becomes more important. And so that was a great moment of, I was like, well, I knew we could stop the recording if I got completely off and we could start over. And, but it was just for a split second. And then Catherine sort of caught me and brought me back in and plugged me back into the group. So,
No, and
so there's a good, I'm hoping no one will notice that I got a little bit off. Let's hope for that. But
that's the organic nature of just these smaller ensembles,
right,
the
right.
beauty of it without a conductor, you're literally, you move as a unit and can be much more human, I guess, with tempo and everything else, rather than just boom, boom, boom. So that's just
and if you're playing in a band,
about small ensemble.
Right. And if you're playing in a band or orchestra and you need the beat, you just sort of look up towards the conductor and it's there. But when there's no conductor, where do you find that? And it's from your fellow musicians. So there's lots of good moments of that. But I just wanted to point out the part in the second movement where I got slightly off. And again, I'm hoping none of this will be noticeable and you'll forget we had this conversation. But just for students out there, also that, performances
well, and
are
it's just
not
part of the
perfect.
realities of playing right now in a socially
Right.
distant setting. So it's just
Right.
something we all have to be conscious of. So,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Well, without
Right.
further ado, let's listen to our next piece.
Dorothy and my dogs both came running into the room when they heard the cello movement start. It was kind of funny. my dogs know and love Dorothy's cello playing, and they both came charging to see if she was here.
Not to bring up another dog story, but just so you know, because of the next piece, my dog's name is Bartok. Just so you know.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we heard about that.
So.
Well, the next group of pieces that we're playing are by Bartók, but by Béla Bartók, who was a Hungarian composer, pianist, and ethnomusicologist, and he lived from 1881 to 1945. And he had, a music school training. He was very much influenced by Richard Strauss at first, and then became really interested in Debussy's music. But he was also a really good friend of the composer Zoltán Kodály, and together they went out into the countryside to collect folk music. So these pieces were actually based on folk dances from the Transylvania area. And I won't try to pronounce the Hungarian, but the first one is actually a traditional stick dance, and that makes me really wonder what that kind of dance looks like. The second one is a sash dance, which used a sash in the dance somehow. And then the last one is actually two dances that were put together, and they're both just fast dances. But I thought it was interesting. I read something about Bartók, which I think makes a lot of sense, that he was interested in tonality, but he was not really using traditional harmonic functions. So I think that's a really good way to describe his music. But again, he was very much interested, along with Kodály, in collecting this regional folk music.
Yes. Now, if I could just point one thing about Bartók, because you did mention he was a tonal composer, but had kind of his own way of doing it. And it was often, and I just bring this up because we're actually, one of my classes, we just finished talking about the church modes, is that people often said that he wrote bitonal, but actually that's not what he was doing. He was actually just using all the different modes, the same, say A is your tonal center, but he would use a Lydian, Mixolydian, Phrygian, all the same modes, and then all together they may appear to be bitonal, but in his mind and his compositional style, he was still writing in A. It's just he was using all the modes available in that particular key. So I find that quite interesting and fascinating as well.
I do too.
Yeah. So.
I want to put in one little fun fact note as well, because
yes,
I have
please.
to chime in a little bit about Bartók. Just for all of you that don't know how string players work, I actually happen to have my cello right here. I was teaching all afternoon in the same room we just gave our recital in. And on the cello here, we have something very famous called the Bartók pits. And the Bartók pits is, when we pits, it's basically we're using our fingers to pluck the strings. So I don't know how else coming through on our Zoom, but okay, yeah, sounding good. You got a little bass line happening. That's my C string, my lowest string. But if I were to Bartók pits, it has a real percussive sound, and it's like a really kind of fun, aggressive pizzicato where all my middle-aged boy students really love doing this. They make this really loud snapping sound where the string snaps against the fingerboard. So that's what we call the Bartók pits.
Thank you. And yes, and his body of string quartets is, probably only second to perhaps Beethoven's in terms of what most people, consider in the literature. So if you have not heard his string quartets, definitely check them out, because it's really enjoyable experience. Okay, well, let's let the audience hear Bartók's Romanian folk dances, and we'll all be back in a little bit. Okay, well, thank you again for being here and for sharing your music with us. It's been a real treat so far. So if you'd like to talk about the next piece, this piece, just so you know, our Music 110 appreciation students, we're in the midst of the Baroque period right now. So this is one of the pieces that they've actually studied. So I was happy to see that this was one of your selections for this evening. So I'll let you talk a little bit about it. If maybe you can talk about, though, just, the idea that it's a concerto grosso, and obviously it's a transcription for 3. So what did you have to do, in terms of timbre, dynamics, and so forth, to get the feeling between the ritornello theme and the solo section while you're playing it? I mean, it comes across very successful, I think, when you play it, but just some thoughts on that.
Well, one of the things this arrangement does is there are lots of big sections with a lot of harpsichord as the feature. And we are not playing with a harpsichord. So that's one of the things is if you listen to a recording of the actual instrumentation of this, you will notice there are large sections that you're not going to hear right now because of the missing harpsichord.
But I think to answer your question about how to vary the texture, I think it's just it's a good arrangement. So the arrangement takes care of a lot of that of the contrast between the tutti and the soli parts.
Yeah, because of it being the concerto grosso, like we're talking about like a lot of soloists. So they're trying, honestly, covering it with just 3 people just feels like almost an impossible task. The arranger really did an amazing job, I thought, with this particular arrangement, because we as players have played this Brandenburg Concerto No. 5 in many different forms and different arrangements. The original, like we said, has the harpsichord as a soloist, and that was fairly new for that time period, for harpsichord not to just be an accompanying type of, like a keyboard type, just accompanying other soloists, but we have 3 major soloists. We've got the violin, we've got the flute, and a harpsichord. So they're all supposed to be like the major solo lead singer type of role. So basically it was kind of, my part kind of incorporates the cello part, the bass line incorporates a lot of the harpsichord and accompaniment, sort of bringing the harmony and kind of bringing the texture together. And that's what was great about this arrangement, is that it gave me a lot to do, actually, as the cellist, to try to, but of course it's in no way different than, like, of course, Katherine and Marie are carrying like the heavy load of the solo parts. And making sure that those come out. But if I hope, in the class you heard the full original. The full original is just the very greatest. So no arrangement, I feel like, maybe I'm just a purist, but no arrangement can ever really trump the original. It's kind of like somebody who does a cover of the original. It's just I love what we did, but do listen to the original, just to really appreciate everything, Bach's genius, and what he put together there. And I thought I'd say, you
were going to mention an anniversary coming up, I guess.
Yes, I'm going to bring, as I was looking into this even a little bit more, I realized that exactly 2 weeks from today, Wednesday night, 2 weeks from today is the exact 300-year anniversary of when this piece was composed. So we're celebrating the 300-year mark, right on the nose. I was looking at it right on the nose, even though they kind of, people kind of disagreed about when it happened, but that was, March of 1721. So March of 1721. So what I kind of enjoy about, and I've always enjoyed as a musician and playing, because this is not our first time doing the Brandenburg 5. It's such an incredibly popular piece, of course, and is that it's one of Bach's more secular, part of his secular repertoire, because he was such a great church composer and organist, and he did a lot of sacred music. So this is an era and time in his life where he was employed by nobility and not the church. So he was able to just sort of expand into this whole other area of playing. So we get to play something that doesn't have a religious background to it. And it's just, I feel like it shows a little bit more of that side of him, I guess is what I would say. And there's some fun stories behind it that I was reading into about the background of this actual piece being composed, and that there was Bach was coming into Brandenburg, which is where this is named for the prince that sponsored this piece being he was part of the nobility, not exactly a prince, that part of the nobility that sponsored the composing of this piece. And so they invited Bach to Brandenburg, and it's just really close to Berlin. If you want to see where that is, it's sort of like off to the west of Berlin. And they brought him there to, and of course, he composed all these Brandenburg concertos, but the fifth one in this year was close to the time when he got into this sort of organ duel with another organist who was he was there in town before Bach, and Bach is younger, and there's kind of this sort of situation where his name is, I'm going to try to read it because I'm not very good at French. He was a French organist named Marchand, and Marchand was actually got really nervous and scared about the duel between the two organists. Bach was coming into town, and so Marchand actually fled.
Like Battle of the Bands Baroque style.
So Bach wins. But I really enjoyed that little side note that Bach won this sort of organ duel because the guy, he just like skipped town, and so there's Bach. Fun side notes, but I like how this is sort of set up. This Brandenburg Concerto has that sort of same situation where you've got a fast movement, allegro, a middle, pretty lengthy middle movement called affettuoso, which is translated as very tenderly and emotionally tender, sort of a middle section, and then a really lively last movement. So D major, one of the brightest keys, I feel like, for string players, for sure.
It's my
Flutes
favorite
too.
key
Yep.
for
Flute too? Okay.
player.
It's a really bright, fun key, D major. So any of you that are looking to compose, you're so inspired by our concert program today that you want to like compose some music, D major, go for it. We really enjoy playing the key of D major. It makes our instruments sound good. I hope you guys agree too. So why don't we just go for it?
Let's do it. All right. Thank you very much. Let's listen.
I do love some Brandenburg.
Yes, and we're back. Yes. Thank you again for sharing that with us tonight. We just have one piece left.
And it's short.
It's very short, so we're ending right on time. Maybe since this is the last piece, before we play it, if anyone in the audience has a question, I know we've talked a lot ourselves, so maybe I'm sure we answered everyone's questions just through our chat. But if anyone has a question, feel free to just type it in the Q&A, and I'd be happy to pass it along to any of our guests tonight.
While we're waiting to see if anyone does that, I did have someone actually text me and ask me about our masks.
Sure.
So I do have my flute platypus mask here. So the Broadway Relief Project, they were doing these as a fundraiser, and Dorothy and I were both using these. Mine looks a little more ridiculous because it's a larger size, and you were seeing it in profile. But basically, it's just a rigid mask, and then there's a hole in the side that you can sort of squiggle the flute into. The hard part is it takes so long to get it in and out that during rests I sort of have to sit there and awkwardly just hold the flute because I don't have time to take it down and put it back in again. So it did make for some more awkward playing moments there. But
Yes. But yeah, that was the first time I've seen in person
yeah.
flute mask, seen everyone else. I know some other people I know that record classical music, they just have sometimes just the flautist or whoever, they're just like all the way over there instead, you know, like I think you mentioned before, that it makes it really hard to perform as an ensemble, you know. So
we do have a few questions in the Q&A. So the first one is about the name of the piece with the fantastic cello section, which was the Eschbacher, as the middle movement of the Eschbacher concertino. And then, yeah, someone did notice that Dorothy was stepping on a device, and that is the page turner she was playing off of her iPad. So it's got two pedals on it, one to turn the page forward and then one to turn the page back. So that gives hands off. You don't have to stop playing in order to turn the page. And then also, if you notice hers, the profile is so much smaller playing with the iPad than with all our music stands as well. So, yep.
I was just going to say the second movement of the Eschbacher is called cantabile, and that means in a singing manner. And I think that really describes well what the cello does there.
Yeah.
okay, any other questions or comments? Just some in the chat, just people just saying that you did a great job with the Brandenburg Concerto. Because like I said, of any of the pieces that my students are familiar with, that would be the one that's the most fresh in their mind right now. So I'm sure
right.
enjoyed that the most.
Thanks.
And then another student just mentioned that they were familiar with the stick dance from Romania, where it's actually used as a prop. So
Still want to see it though.
I know. we'll have to research
look it up.
Yeah.
Video performances. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this last piece was some kind of went viral, right? Or the performance of it, if I'm correct.
Yes. For some reason the sea shanties went viral on TikTok, and it's one called the Wellerman. And it was written probably somewhere 1860 to 1870. And so the Weller brothers were English guys that moved to New Zealand, and they had supply ships. So the Wellerman was a supply ship. And so this is basically the story of a ship called the Billia T that's waiting to be supplied by the ship, and it never gets its supplies, and they've harpooned a whale, and it's like a ghost ship, and it just keeps going on forever. So it's kind of like the Flying Dutchman. It's a ghost ship, which I think is a really cool idea. And so the main lyrics or a big important line in there is soon may the Wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. So I figure they're looking to have some hot toddies or something. So.
Yeah, and if you haven't caught on with the whole sort of TikTok, I mean, it was just one of those funny viral things, but it's definitely worth.
Just happened.
There's some great versions of it. I was just surfing around YouTube the other day, finding all kinds of fun versions. So it's definitely worth looking up if you haven't heard any of the sea shanties.
I'm sure my students are much more well versed with TikTok than say I am.
I only know this because Catherine. I've only seen it on YouTube. I'm not quite on TikTok, but
and now I understand there is one cool feature of TikTok that people can duet, so that they can take an existing video and add their thing to it. So that happened many times over with this. So if you look it up on YouTube, you'll see the stuff that people added, and it's pretty fun.
Great. Well, let's listen to it, and then this will be our final piece for the evening. We'll just come back to say our goodbyes. Thank you all for attending, and let's listen to the Wellerman.
And that will be at in my head for the next 2 days, like it was after I played it.
It's been in my head
Earworm.
last Sunday.
Yeah.
Very catchy tune. So
It is.
Yes.
well, thank you all for coming. It's been a really pleasurable evening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I'm sure my students and our members of the community as well. So I'm just going to say a couple thank yous to everybody before we say goodbye. So this concludes our presentation here at Triton College. I want to thank MKD Trio for a wonderful evening. I would also like to thank Natasha Ritzma for video recording the event. I would also like to thank President Mary Rita Moore, Vice President Dr. Susan Campos, Dean of Arts and Sciences Kevin Lee, Associate Dean Rick Segovia, and our VPC Department Chairperson Dennis McNamara for their support in implementing this virtual series. Thank you all for attending. Our next event is March 24th and will be a performance by Triton faculty pianist Dr. Akiko Konishi. So everyone take care. Good night. Hope to see you on March 24th. Dorothy, Catherine, Marie, have a great night. Thank you again. Look forward.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks again.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.